So we're here with Mike Vizcarra.
Here with Tony Lee Glenn on the Tony Lee Glenn channel.
Mike, what do you want to show us today?
Well, here, tell you, if you want to do, we could do a quick walkthrough of the P3. This is the only plane you can actually walk in and check it out. P3, this one was built in 1968, and it was utilized by the Navy until just recently, in the last couple of years. And
really?
It was replaced by the P8 Poseidon, which is essentially a 737. Now this is a Lockheed product here, and as you might know, it was used as a civilian airliner for years. So wow. This is a militarized version. Come on up.
Yeah, brother. Jim, if you don't mind. I gotta be careful. I injured my knee about 2 weeks ago, and I'm a little gimpy.
Oh no.
So forgive me if I'm a little slow.
It carried a crew of 12, and its primary mission was to search for submarines, enemy submarines, Soviet Union, Chinese submarines. Okay. It would carry what's called sonobuoys. I don't know if you ever. This is one that's opened up, and they slide into here, and they go out in the ocean, and you know how sonar works, right?
Yeah.
That's how beep,
yeah,
ping,
beep, beep.
and they monitor. They have all these guys monitoring, and they essentially trying to track submarines. So
wow! So they're up in the air flying. They drop these guys, and these guys create the beeps, and the beeps send the echoes off of the submarines.
Sonar, and the sonobuoys would catch all that information, send it to these guys, and you can see their various. Here's more sonobuoys would be going here.
Wow!
And you can see the crew.
I'm sorry, if you don't get in front of me, man, go ahead.
You can see this is where the crew would sit here, and they monitor the picture of all the sonobuoys, and they'd have a crew of 12, 3 pilots, flight engineer type, and then all these enlisted tech that would monitor the positioning of these. You can see this is what it would look like when it's all illuminated.
How long could a craft like this stay in the air?
Their typical missions would be 10, 12 hours. That's why they have bunks. We'll show you on the way out. They have bunks back there. They can all rest. They have a microwave.
Wow. So this is where the guy that was really listening would be.
Yeah, you listen and it can control. You control.
What's the joystick over there for?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I imagine it's like to control the display there.
Crazy.
But we're heading up towards the cockpit area, and of course you got a couple more monitoring stations, right?
Yeah.
So again, all these were I assume they divvied up. I never flew in the P3, but I assume they divvied up sectors. Each person would monitor their sector and monitor what the information from the sonobuoys. Here's the cockpit. You can see fairly, dated technology. You've got basically dual everything, dual sticks or control wheels, and then engine instruments. The primary job would just be to fly the airplane, right? And then they have a third guy that could relieve them if you're flying for 12 hours.
Wow.
What they would do is routinely get airborne and shut down one engine to save gas. It's 4-engine airplanes, so they could save gas by just going slow and loitering and turn off one engine. And I think it could even do 2.
Crazy, Jim.
Yeah. Save that gas. Cool. You could be out there longer. And then when you need a break, you go back there and get some coffee and get some meals. They have, your box lunches. But that's pretty much it. Again, pretty antiquated as far as technology. You could see the glass, the 2 little glass displays were not original to the, they updated this
Mike,
machine.
what kind of equipment did you train on before they put you out?
I will show you outside.
Is it out here?
They have 5 different airplanes that I've flown. 3 of them were in the training command. I'll show you. Yeah,
really?
Excellent. Yeah. Come on, too. All right. Yeah.
Hey.
And again, these are essentially were the same as an airliner back in the day. And Eisenhower, before they had Air Force One, he flew one of them. Go straight back, Jim. I'll show you the bunks. So if you get tired, take a little resty poo right here. You see the rack? Got the bed up here. You can have a meal here. You have your coffee station and a microwave. Doesn't get much better than this. 12. You can go anywhere from 10 to 12 people. Okay. And they might even have more. Now, they had other versions where they could carry linguists if they were monitoring electronic emissions. Yeah. They had what's called an EP3. This is called a P3 Orion. They had an electronic P3, EP3, which had more capability and not a standard mission than the P3 here. There's obviously a couple bathrooms in here.
Well, it's just suppressant foam.
Yeah, how's that? Cool, huh? And again, that's where, and I'll show you outside real quick where the sonobuoys come out.
Go ahead, Jim. I'll follow you.
Watch your step.
Many thanks to Brother Jim for helping me shoot some video today.
So that big boom at the end is called the MAD boom, or magnetic anomaly detection pod.
Okay.
And that is essentially the big listening device. That's looking for the sonar information. The sonars, you remember what they look like, little tubes.
Yeah.
They come out all these right here. They're one-time use only. They go in the drink, they work, and then they go to the bottom and they're done.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so the bottom of the ocean is littered with these guys.
Yes. think about how long this thing flew. How many years?
How many times they would have done, like in World War II, they did just gone.
Well, no, these weren't around in World War II.
Really?
This is 1960s, about
Vietnam
1960s.
era. Cold War era, you're right.
Yeah, definitely cold. And again, only recently did they stop in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's a mission now by the P-8 Poseidon. So let's move on.
Yeah, man.
That's one of the only Army aircraft here. Hey, Tony,
Yeah.
which service has more airplanes, the Air Force or the Army?
I'm gonna guess the Army, because the Army, where the Air Force came out.
Well, that's true. But even today, they have more aircraft in the Army. Guess which has more ships or boats, the Navy or the Army?
I still think the Navy.
No, it's the Army.
It is the
Because
Army?
that just shows you the difference in the size between your Army and your Navy and your other services.
Wow.
Yeah.
More
Now
boats
keep
in
in
the
mind,
Army.
but keep in mind, we're talking little boats too.
Yeah,
Everything.
yeah.
It's just kind of ironic.
Landing boats and stuff like
Yeah,
that. then, I
all
guess.
that. Let's go out to the outside. So this is the front of the P3. You can see again four engine prop job. Again, mostly flown in the 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, I know there were generations that flew this, where a guy flew it. His father had flown it. His grandfather had flown it. Just
Wow.
almost like the Air Force B-52, where it's been around for so long that generations have flown it. Now we have that's an Air Force airplane here. It's a T-33. It's a T-Bird, and it was the 50s technology, one of the first few jets. This is a trainer version, thus the T. T stands for trainer. T-33. The fighter version was the P-80. They flew in Korea.
Now you just keep on talking.
Okay.
You're holding the mic. I'm
Gotcha.
gonna go up here and hold this
Yeah,
up
sure.
in the cockpit.
Sure.
So
If
I can look at
we can see it. It's a subsonic fighter. You can see it's a single. This one actually has two because it is a trainer. But they had a single seat version that was the fighter version that flew in Korea. Pretty bird. You might see some of these at the air shows every once in a while. There's still some flying around. Now, this next bird, you see it's got a Marine Corps designation. As you all probably know, the Marine Corps is actually part of the Navy. There's only one Department of the Navy, but it has two branches inside the Department of the Navy. The Department of the Navy has the Navy branch, and it has the U.S. Marine Corps branch. Well, so subsequently, they'll have a lot of airplanes that the Navy has, and this is one of them. So the Navy flew, this is their version of the, essentially looks a lot like the F-86, which is an Air Force bird, but this is the Navy version, the Fury. And this is actually, took off from the aircraft carrier and landed on the aircraft carrier. It's a fighter, yeah. And again, it's 50s technology.
So the snout on this, the air comes through there. That's part of the jet mechanism.
This is the intake, right? This is the large mouth intake, which would of course feed the single engine. That's not inside the air. There's no engine, but that's how it get the. And of course, you have compressor blades, and that's how the jet engine works. It shoots, exhaust out the back.
Did you know all this stuff, or have you had to train to learn some of this?
Well, I mean, I knew some of it growing up, just because a little bit about airplanes. But I mean, the planes. Your basic plane has wings, right? Engine, and if it's a fighter, it's going to have bullets and armaments.
50 caliber or something like that?
Well, you know what? This one probably tells you right here. I know mine all had 20 millimeter. This is does it even say? I'll have to look that up and get back to you on that one, Tony. It doesn't say.
Guns, 40 times 20 millimeters.
Oh, it is 20. It is 20. Yeah, 20. Oh, yeah, 20. So 20.
A 7.87-inch cannon.
Which is this is all the same. This is what's called the Vulcan. Well, I don't think this version is called the Vulcan, but this is the same. The 20 mil is still what we carry in the Hornet today and the Tomcat. I'll show you.
Pretty bad load, Ben.
Well, you don't carry as many as you might think. You only carry 4,000 rounds, which could be shot in a minute.
Wow.
Now this here is a Cougar, which is essentially a swept wing version of the Panther. Have you ever seen the classic movie Bridges to Hickory? Have you ever seen that?
I've not seen it, but now I got some watching to do.
Put a link in. It uses the Panther, which is a straight wing version. You see, this is obviously sweep wing.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the later version. It's a Cougar, it's called. But anyway, it's a fighter that was used in the Navy.
Wow.
Again, this is still 50s sort of technology. Now you're asking about aircraft that I trained in.
Yeah.
Here's the aircraft. So I started in the little propeller one. That's the first one that at Naval Aviation you started in that one.
Oh, that one is 02 over there?
No,
with
yeah, exactly.
Shark teeth on
And
it.
that's
What's that called?
It's a T-34 Mentor. The ones that I flew actually was a turboprop, and it's called the Turbo Mentor. But anyway, that's T-34. You can see 2 seats, very slow. It's just your basic get airborne. Then once you finish that, you select for which. If you're going to be a helicopter guy, you go to helicopters. If you're going to go big wing, you go to what's essentially a version of the Bonanza. If you're going to go tactical or jet aviation, you go into this one. And this is it's kind of in poor condition paint-wise, but it's the T2 Buckeye, and this is a great plane.
In this one, huh?
This is the first one that naval aviators will go out and fly in jets and land on the aircraft carrier. Now, when I say that's back, a few years ago, today we don't fly these anymore. But this is the first one that we were trained to go out on the aircraft carrier and again fly. Now, we still use this when I was flying at the Tomcat at Miramar. We would use this for annual spin training because it's a very forgiving aircraft. You could do almost anything you want in this airplane, and if you let go, it's going to fly away. Unlike some of these other aircraft. So we would use it to get ourselves in a very uncomfortable situation like a spin. I mean, you could do anything with this plane, I'm telling you. You could put in with a Luftwaffe where it's basically cartwheeling through the air.
Really?
I mean, things are just spinning around, and if you let it go, essentially, you're going to fly away. Well, we wouldn't just, that you don't train just to let it go. We would actually use anti-spin control from the Tomcat because it would still work and you'd come out. But I flew that for years.
Tomcat's F-14, right?
Yeah, that's we'll get to that one right across.
And that's the one you spent most of your time
yes.
flying?
So I started in that one, went to this one, and then the last trainer is the A4. Let's go that way. Yeah. Now, this is not a training version. This is actual operational tactical because we actually use these in Vietnam as a light attack aircraft. Oh. Do you remember John McCain? And he was shot down off of his ship. Yeah. He was flying the A4 when he got shot down. Yeah, very small. It doesn't look as small. It's kind of tall, but I'm telling you, I was 140 pounds when I joined the Navy. My shoulders, it's a very small cockpit. My shoulders would touch the sides.
Really?
I don't know how anybody.
So John must have been a tight.
Well, I mean, I had friends. You're high. I had friends 6'5" that flew, and they flew in and I don't know how in the world they. I do not know how in the world they fit in it because I'm telling you, I was small and I fit in there no problem. But anyway, we would finish our training in the A4. And that's when you get your wings, okay? Yeah. And that's when they decide, hey, where are you going to fly in the fleet? And then you had to go to that specific type of. And from here, I went to the Tomcat community. Now, we skipped over this jet. This jet here, you can see it says Marines on it. It was never actually flown operationally. It was an actually Air Force airplane, and the Air Force didn't even fly it operationally, but they developed it. It's the F-5 Tiger II. It was developed primarily it was developed for the Air Force, and when the Air Force went with the F-16, they wanted to use it for foreign military sales, and we did in fact sell a lot of these to Saudi Arabia, Iran, Vietnam. When Vietnam fell, some of these F-5s were given away. Yeah,
sleek looking.
It is, and they still fly these today as adversary in private corporations that have taken on the adversary role. It's a sleek, and believe it or not, my dad, who you met, Vic, he flew this.
Really?
In 1972 to 75, he flew the F-5. This is the F-5.
When did your dad retire?
He retired in 83.
So he retired a year before you went in?
Yeah. We almost were crossing over. I know, it's funny, isn't it? But yeah, so we got that one on. That's a Marine Corps. It came from Miramar. It was used as adversary. That's why it's painted with the star, to simulate the adversary. So that's your F. So I flew all three of these in the training command. Sorry, that one, and that one, the training command. Then you come out with your wings and you go to wherever you're going to fly. Now, before we go that way, I want to talk to you about this beast of an airplane right here. This is the F-105. This is the one that my dad flew in Vietnam. In fact, he was shot down in North Vietnam flying this beast. You can see it's huge. Single engine. At the time, it was the fastest thing in the world. I mean, it was super, super fast. And this thing wore the brunt of the air war in Vietnam. Half of them were shot down, pilots killed, or captured as POWs.
Why so? Because it's big.
It was a good bomber, and it was used as it was the workhorse for the Air Force. Yes. This thing, it was designed for tactical nukes. This is actually, you could have a nuclear bomb inside, and they actually used to train with those. Of course, in Vietnam, we didn't use nuclear, so they just strapped bombs, and they became basically all-purpose bombers.
These are fuel engines.
These are fuel tanks, right?
Yeah.
These are external fuel tanks, and you could carry a center line tank, but most time it have bombs in the center line, and you can have bombs on the wing, and it had air-to-air missile capability. Not a super great turning fighter, because you can see it was made for speed, and it was a good bomber. It wasn't the greatest fighter in the world, but it's a big airplane, and again, there are Medal of Honor winners having flown the F-105.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, the next one, now that's Air Force only. The F-105 is Air Force only. This is the mighty F-4 Phantom.
It's beautiful.
Which, I don't know if you recognize it, but that's my squadron. I was a squadron
Really?
I was a squadron commander of this squadron. We weren't flying F-4s when I was a squadron commander. We were flying F-14s. But this is the predecessor.
Did you know Slim Wooldridge?
I did not. I do not know who that is. I imagine he's some North Carolinian here. But this is the Phantom. The Phantoms were huge. They came in the service in the 60s, flew throughout the 70s. Both the Air Force and the Navy flew the Phantom. And there were a lot of Phantoms produced. A lot of Phantoms sold to other countries. Israel, Germany. I mean, just a lot of countries had Phantoms. I think it's one of the most produced aircraft in the history. That's just a gas tank in there. You used to carry either two wing tanks. It carried missiles, carried bombs.
Michael, let's pause for just a second.
Sure.
I want to make sure my batteries are doing okay.
I got a red light. Is that bad?
No, that's totally cool.
Cool.
You're good.
All right.
I'm just going to make sure, number one, this one. So I'm sure Jim's still recording.
Yeah.
Mine is too. Let me make sure that the Max is.
Just capture B-roll for you.
Oh, dude, that is fine.
Jim is all about B-roll.
Thank you for doing this. Oh, yeah.
Now you can see this one was painted not too long ago.
65%. So about the next
Okay.
10 minutes, we'll check this one
Okay.
again. All right. Let's keep
Again,
rolling.
this one, both Navy and Air Force. This is a Navy one, and they were fairly similar. I mean, they didn't have to do a whole lot of modifications between the Air Force and the Navy for this aircraft. Obviously, took off on the aircraft carrier and landed back on the aircraft carrier. And again, was kind of the fighter of the 70s and until the Tomcat kind of took its place, 60s and 70s. Now, this is the A7 Corsair, and it was designed to basically take the place of the A4 in a light attack role. So this is a little bit later technology. Again, it flew in Vietnam in the 70s. And even when I was in, they still had A7s flying. They were getting phased out in the 80s. In fact, even some flew in Desert Storm in the 90s. So I think the last squadron phased out in the probably the mid 90s or so. Again, light attack. It could carry some air-to-air armament, and that's what these pylons are for air-to-ground tanks or bombs. A7A, kind of got the big intake, kind of like the other one.
Mike, what was the first missions you flew? Was it in Iraq or Afghanistan? Or what was it?
Combat missions? Well, it was in the 80s during the. It was called combat missions, but nobody was really shooting at us because it was Southern Watch.
Okay.
If you flew over or near Iraq, you got green ink, which is combat missions. That was the first, and then of course Afghanistan and later Iraq. So this is the mighty Tomcat.
Wow.
This is the plane that I had the most time in. This is the one I got out of training command, which I wanted, the F-14. I got my dream shot, got to go to Miramar, fly the Tomcat, and I stayed in it for years and years. I just went back and forth between squadrons. I was an instructor and went TopGun in the aircraft, and then we flew it at TopGun as well. And I flew it until it retired. It retired before I did. In 2006, they retired all the Tomcats.
How fast does it go, Mike?
This is a 2.4 Mach. And
So this would be about 1,400 miles an hour, 1,200 miles?
yes, depends on, see they have here 1,544 miles per hour. The fastest I've gone was 2.2. So,
And your combat radius 500 miles.
yeah, these are kind of like, they're very, for one thing, we air refuel, so that's kind of, you could,
So you had tankers would meet up with you.
Yeah, exactly.
You might fly 2,000 miles.
oh yeah, I mean, I've flown the Tomcat for like 8-10 hours straight.
Wow.
Yeah. You see the double chin pod here. This is Earth's infrared search and track. This is a television TCS. You could identify large, if you wanted to not shoot down a commercial aircraft, which unfortunately has happened. You remember in Iran when our mission in life was not to shoot down civilian aircraft, right? This camera set could actually identify. You could see it 40 miles away. You could tell it's an airliner, and it's not a target.
Wow.
So the Earth obviously is passive, so that was kind of a nice way to be able to
So
passively
the
target.
cameras really are good quality.
Well, I mean, for the day, that was great technology. You'll say that most of the Navy aircraft are going to have double nose wheels, and the reason is because the shuttle, which is what launches the aircraft off the end, fits right between, and the aircraft will kneel, and this launch bar will come down, and these two little things will get hooked up, and the shuttle, which used to be steam powered, and now it's electromagnetic. Same for the arresting gear. Which is why whenever you see old footage of the carrier, you'll see what looks like steam everywhere. Well, it is steam coming up because everything was the tracks were steam powered. So it would haul you from a dead stop to 150 miles an hour in about 2.5 seconds, and you're flying. So
that's like what, 6 G's or something, 7 G's when you're taking off.
yes, Kim.
Oh, sorry.
I have a 17-year-old that came all the way from Fayetteville. Would love to get in the air.
Okay,
Plane.
let's.
Sorry.
Can we pause?
Yeah, man, we have to.
We'll save this.
You go right ahead, brother.